Welcome out on this wintry night. I have seen Indiana in full force now. I've seen nice weather. I've seen windy or felt windy times, and now we have the snow. Well, I think Wendell told me there's a saying out here, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes or whatever. I've heard a similar thing in Ohio, but it at least gave a day, I think, in that saying. Give it a day. Things can change quickly. Appreciated the service thus far, the songs and the devotional that was shared. That really is a challenge. King Josiah's willingness to be a doer of the word. When he saw what was needed, he was willing to do it. And they had a Passover that wasn't kept for I don't know how many years, but they renewed that. There was not just an inward trying to be better, but an actual performing of God's commands. And that's just a real challenge there. Well, 6 years ago, we saw the power of small things. Anybody know what's happened 6 years ago? A microscopic virus stopped the whole world. In essence, stopped it, disrupted business and travel, caused death for some people, canceled many a meeting, and created many others. Ushered in an economic depression and had researchers scrambling for answers. Gave rise to many conspiracy theories. All kinds of things. Coronavirus. Have we already forgotten it? 6 years later. Wow, that was quite a time. To think that basically the world as we know it, or across the globe, it changed things. And some things have never gone back to how they were before. In many ways, life is normal now, but there's many restaurants that now provide, take-home meals. They carry out, and the drive-thrus are busier than they used to be, not as many sit-ins. Just a lot of things, even in the business world. Some things change, but other things went back to normal. But all because of a virus. Reminded also of fires and explosions that start with just a spark, just a little fire. A careless person forgets or fails to extinguish the campfire completely. And a wind comes along and it creates a forest fire. How wonderful to have a fire that heats the house, a fire to cook your food on, but how deadly when that fire gets out of control. A spark ignites dynamite. A spark ignites gunpowder and shoots bullets. I have not had a lot of spare time while I'm here, being there at the wonderful place that Wendell and Darlene have provided for us. Most of my time is spent studying and so forth, but there's a book there that I just had to read, and it's so suspenseful. And it's a book about John F. Kennedy, and every now and then I just need to get my mind off and just and relax and just read something. And so I'm reading through there, and I know what's going to happen. But a spark send a bullet and killed a man, and it's happening all the time. Small things do great things. Turn to James chapter 3. I think I told you last evening, or one of the evenings, what this topic would be. And if you're following, we're just going through the book of James. And James chapter 3 talks about something very small. It's a little bigger than a virus, but it is a small member in our body that can create a fair amount of difficulty. And so we want to read this. And I, again, came up with my own little version that I would like to read then afterward. Would you stand with me to, again, do responsive reading? We will read through verse 12. James chapter 3, 1 through 12. I'll read verse 1. My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation.
For in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man, and able also to bridle the whole body.
Behold, we put bits in the horses' mouths, that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body.
Behold also the ships, which though they be so great, and are driven of fierce winds, yet are they turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth.
Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth.
And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell.
For every kind of beasts, and of birds, and of serpents, and of things in the sea is tamed, and hath been tamed by mankind.
But the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison.
Therewith bless we God, even the Father, and therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of God.
Out of the same mouth proceedeth blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not so to be.
Doth a fountain send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter?
Can the fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries? Either a vine figs. So can no fountain both yield salt water and fresh.
Thank you. You may be seated. I like the way that James takes examples both from nature and we saw last evening examples from the Old Testament of Abraham and Rahab to illustrate his points. Chapter 1, we had a mirror, looking into the mirror. And we can relate to these types of illustrations. And tonight we have comparisons of the bit we put in a horse's mouth. We have the ships with their rudder, a small piece on the ship, but it turns the ship. We have the example of a fire, the idea of a forest fire. We're talking about things in nature, birds and animals and serpents and sea creatures. It talks about trees, talks about fountains or springs to bring out his point. And it's just a challenging chapter here as we think about this little member, the tongue. The title this evening is Faith and Speech. Faith and Speech. He tells us that if we don't mess up with our tongue, we basically don't mess up anywhere. Have any of you ever messed up with your tongue, with your mouth? Said words you shouldn't? We all have, right? Well, let me read my rendering of it, just to try to, I think of it that, there's some words and phrases that are a little bit, what does that mean, be not many masters? That's not our current English, is it? Shouldn't be many masters. Well, how can I be many? I'm just one person, But what is it really saying? All right, here we go. My brothers, not many of you should become teachers, since we know that those who teach will be judged more strictly. Stopping there a little bit. What have I been doing this whole week? I've been talking. I've been running this little member right here. I've been teaching. I've been preaching. And here it says, not many of you should be teachers because of the serious responsibility when you teach or preach, knowing that you will be receiving a stricter judgment. Teachers talk a lot. Teachers impart knowledge and tell others how to live. And their works would better measure up to what they're saying. That's a challenge for me. It's work to go somewhere and preach for a week. But in another sense, the teaching and the preaching is the easier part. It's the living. That's the challenge. To actually live up to the ideals that I give to you, I present here from the Word, I try to expound on it. And maybe some of you have this idea that, well, back in our hometown, I must just, have it all together. And the truth is, people who know me know I'm not perfect. And so, yeah, it's as we talk to others, we need to practice what we preach, measure up to it. Chapter 2, we talked about that, last evening, the faith and works. It's not about just talking about a profession, but it's about living. And this evening, our last verse was verse 12 of chapter 3, but verse 13 says that the wise man that's endued with knowledge among you should show out of his good conduct or behavior what? His works, not his words, his works with meekness of wisdom. And so in here between works, we have sandwiched this section about our speech. Now, our speech can be part of our works, I believe, because by our works, by our words, we do convey messages that either can build or destroy. So it comes into the line of works. But Matthew 12, verse 37, Jesus said, "For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned." Now, they tell me that in many criminal cases, attorneys don't want their clients to be talking. You just don't talk, because anything you say might give the other side something to get a hold of. So it's better to just not talk. Well, they know that the words can get you into trouble real quick. By thy words thou shalt be justified, or thou shalt be condemned. So the Bible puts a lot of importance on our speech, our words. Now let's continue in verse 2. We all stumble and make mistakes in many ways. A person who does not stumble in his speech, but controls his tongue, is a mature person who is able to keep his whole body in subjection. Verse 3. Look at what we do with horses. We make them obey us by putting a small bit in their mouth. By holding and tugging the reins, we can stop the horse or make it turn to the right or to the left. By that small bit, we control the horse's entire body. Verse 4. Or consider the huge ships that are driven by strong winds on the seas, yet the helmsman steers it however he wishes by turning the small rudder in the back. Verse 5. Just like the bit and the rudder, the tongue is a small member, but it makes big boasts. Consider another illustration. Look at how a roaring forest fire is started by a little spark or campfire. Verse 6. And you're getting the hint. I'm not trying to do a direct word-for-word version here, adding some things to it. Verse 6. The tongue is like that small fire that develops into a whole world of evil. This small member ends up corrupting the whole body and setting ablaze the whole course of life. Hellfire itself ignites it. Verse 7. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures have been tamed and trained by humans. 8. But no human can bring the tongue under control and tame it. It is an unrestrainable, evil member filled with harmful, deadly poison, and maybe we should add, that can be ejected to kill and to destroy. Verse 9. With the same tongue, we praise God our Father and curse people who are made in God's image. From the same mouth comes blessing and cursing. Brothers, this is not acceptable. It's not the way it should be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? Can fig trees produce olives or grapevines figs, my brothers? Obviously not. Neither can a spring yield both salt water and fresh. there's a story in the Martyr's Mirror, pages 979 and 980. The story of a martyr, a lady by the name, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but Maiken Vence. And this lady was a very godly lady, and she was burned at the stake. Before she and others with her were burned at the stake, the executioner or those who were persecuting them put a tongue screw in their mouth. And I'm not sure exactly, I've seen pictures of the tongue screw, a very painful thing that held the tongue to the mouth so that they could not speak. They couldn't talk. Because some of these martyrs were witnessing and praising the Lord, testifying, and they didn't want them to do that. So they put that tongue screw in there to hold their tongue, their mouth, or their tongue in place that they couldn't talk. Her 15-year-old son, Adrian, was there when his mother was burned at the stake. And after the burning was finished, his mother was gone, there were only ashes there. He went over to the ashes and he found the tongue screw. And I believe, maybe it's not this one, but there's one in a museum over in Europe. But what I find interesting in this story, which is also recorded in a book we published, Bedekin's Refuge, in this story, I began to wonder, would I deserve a tongue screw for the same reason that she did? Or do I deserve a tongue screw because of the bad things I tend to say? The poisoned words that would come out. Michael Sattler, before he was burned at the stake, they actually cut his tongue out. It's horrible when you think about those things. But they were busy praising God, and their enemies couldn't handle it. And they wanted to quiet their mouth, make them unable to talk. What if I complain and whine and grumble, and mutter and slander and cuss and backbite and lie and jest? Do I deserve a tongue screw? I hope that we are the type that would be praising God rather than needing to be shut down because of evil speech. Now, James focuses a lot on the negative, about these tongues that were wagging, that they were at fault, they were saying things they shouldn't say, they were causing offense, stumbling, and he makes it so clear in here how evil the tongue can be. I decided this evening to maybe switch and look a little bit more on the positive side of what the tongue can do than just focus on the negative. We know a lot of negative things the tongue can do. I named some already, and there's many more. And we know what kind of damage the tongue can do, how it can be. Words can be so hurtful. Words can cut to the bone, cut to the heart. And for some people, maybe words affect them more than what they affect others. But words start wars. Words start fights and conflicts and so many bad things. Yes, a spark, and it turns into a fire. It causes division. It causes isolation. Just words. They do those things. We read in James chapter 1 that we should be swift to hear and slow to speak. I would like to just take a few minutes here to think about being slow to speak. We have verses, and I have a number of verses from Proverbs this evening that I'd like to refer to. I have them copied here on my paper. Just a reminder that because of how this tongue is so difficult to control, in fact, impossible, according to James, for a human being to control his tongue by his own strength. In light of that, we should be swift to hear and slow to speak. Proverbs 10:19, in the multitude of words there wanteth or lacketh not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise. Proverbs 15:28, the heart of the righteous studieth to answer. You've probably heard it, and I have. Oh, he just said it without thinking. Do we say anything without thinking? We know what that expression means, or we haven't thought it through maybe, or we didn't think about the effect the words might have. So in that sense, yes, we talk without thinking, but we need to remember that according to what James is saying, whether it's the salt water or the fresh, it's coming from somewhere, right? Like the spring, there's something flowing out. And we're going to look at that soon. Where do our words come from? The heart of the righteous studieth to answer. I get the idea of someone who's taking a little bit of time, thinking before answering. Proverbs 17:27 and 28, he that hath knowledge spareth his words. We sometimes think the more somebody can talk, the smarter he is. But this says the other way. A man of knowledge. Often you see that. Very wise people may not just be blabbering all the time. But when they talk, maybe like Samuel, his words didn't fall to the ground. They mean something. It says, even a fool, when he holdeth his peace, is counted wise. And he that shutteth his lips is esteemed a man of understanding. Proverbs 18:13, he that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is folly and shame unto him. Have you ever been thinking of the answer you want to give before you finished listening? You got the answer, and you're thinking about what you're going to say instead of really listening to what the other person is saying. I have that problem at times. It's unwise. It's a shame. We need to listen carefully first. Proverbs 21:23, whoso keepeth his mouth and his tongue keepeth his soul from troubles. And 29:11 says, the type of person who utters all his mind, who is he? It says, a fool uttereth all his mind, but a wise man keepeth it in till afterwards. In other words, he knows how to wait to make this little member start rolling until it's the right time. So there's a lot of words in Proverbs about limiting our words, just being careful. So where do our words come from? Turn with me to Luke 6, a very familiar passage here. By the way, how many of you were busy today? How many of you were together working at the same place today? Yeah, I heard there was some butchering going on or something, right? Okay. I imagine on a cold day like this could be sitting in a warm building could be a little bit tough, right? After working like that, I know how that can be. Luke chapter 6, verse 43 through 47. For a good tree bringeth not forth corrupt fruit, neither doth a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. For every tree is known by his own fruit. For of thorns men do not gather figs, nor of a bramble bush gather they grapes. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, what the heart is full of, his mouth speaketh. So we have to admit that according to Scripture, what comes out of my mouth, what comes out of your mouth, really is an overflow of the heart. It's that spring, and it comes out through the mouth. So what my heart loves or hates, what my heart values or despises, those things come out through the mouth. The tongue is very powerful. The proverb writer says in chapter 18, verse 21, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Think about that. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Words can turn a good day into a bad day. Have you ever had a day that was going well and then something was said that just, maybe it was something against you. Maybe it was something against someone else. Or maybe it was just bad news. Or I've had it already where maybe it wasn't even that bad, but because of the situation, those words just kind of like, oh no. Just kind of give you that sinking feeling. Words can do that. But we're going to look at the good side of that too. So if the words come from the heart, and there's an overflow of the heart here, therefore when my heart holds grudges, or is envious, or malicious, angry, bitter, proud, deceitful, or rebellious, be assured it's only a matter of time when those words are going to start slipping out that show those things within, because they will. I know we can kind of cover up to a certain degree, but the real you and the real me somehow tends to come out, because out of the heart and the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And oh, what great damage can be done when dirty water comes from a dirty spring. What great fires that are set ablaze by words that destroy reputations. They destroy churches. They destroy society. These words that we sometimes call it character assassination, where we assassinate people, their reputations by our words. Destructive speech that the Bible condemns include gossip, lying, slander, bragging, scorning, mockery, flattery. And there's others. Proverbs is full, but I decided not to take time for that. I would like to now look at the positive side of words. I told you a little bit ago that certain words can change a good day to a bad day. The opposite is also true. You might be having a tough day or a bad day, as we say it, but hearing the right word or getting the right letter or the right message can cheer your heart, can lift your spirit. I would like to look at gracious words. Gracious words. The account is given of Jesus in Luke chapter 4, and I would like to turn there now. This was when Jesus, in his early ministry, came to his hometown of Nazareth. And there he went into the Sabbath day, and he stood up to read from the book of Isaiah. And he found the place, and we find this in verse 18 of Luke 4. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. And he closed the book, and he gave it again to the minister, and sat down. And the eyes of all them that were in the synagogue were fastened on him. Now this is I guess in Jewish custom, the speaker sat down. That would be a little bit strange if I would sit here on the bench and preach from there. But seems like Jesus did that. He did the reading, and then he sat down. And everybody was watching him. What's he going to say? This is his hometown. But now he's an adult. He's in his ministry, starting his ministry. In verse 21, he says, he began to say unto them, this day is this scripture fulfilled in your ears. And all bare him witness, and wondered at the gracious words which proceeded out of his mouth. I'll stop there. They wondered at the gracious words that proceeded from his mouth. What do you think it was about the words of Jesus that they were described as gracious? I would like some input, because I'm not 100% sure what it means. In what way were Jesus' words gracious? What is it, the actual words? He probably said more than what we have recorded here. He probably gave a little bit more explanation. So was it his choice of words? Or do you think it was his tone of voice? Somehow they perceived that they were gracious words. Now the words from Isaiah here are very gracious words. They're words of hope. He has sent me to do this work. And Jesus saying, I'm here to do it. This is the time for this passage for fulfillment. So, any ideas? What do you think it was? What was it about Jesus' words that were gracious? Filled with wisdom? They were encouraging words. Sense of compassion. Good. Yeah. We all know that two people can say the exact same words and mean very different things just by their tone of voice. So I don't know how much was it the words, was it his tone, his whole demeanor, but they sensed a graciousness in what he was saying. Now, what he was saying was not a lie, and it wasn't flattery. It wasn't just smoothing things over. Not that. In fact, if we would look at some other passages, I think it's actually in this same chapter. Let me see here. In verses 31 and 32, says, and he came down to Capernaum, a city of Galilee, and taught them on the Sabbath days, and they were astonished at his doctrine, for his word was with power. So this wasn't, his gracious words weren't just because they were kind of wobbly and floppy and just, kind of everything's okay. They were words with power, and yet they were gracious. Again, Jesus, who is the truth, spoke the truth. He spoke with power. Elsewhere, we read that he spoke as one who had authority and not as the scribes and Pharisees. So it wasn't that this speaker, Jesus, was just kind of wishy-washy about what he said just to try to please everybody. And yet it came across gracious. It was truthful. It was powerful. It was hope-inspiring. These were Jesus' gracious words. What does the Bible tell us about our speech and grace? I'd like to look now at seasoned words. So gracious words, and underneath that is seasoned words. Colossians 4:6, let your speech be always with what? You know it, say it. Grace. Let your speech be always with grace, or let your speech always be with gracious words, seasoned with salt. I've learned since I'm here in this community that there's a seasoning they call the shipshawana seasoning here. It's supposed to be really good. Is that what it's called? Fire. Huh. I didn't try it yet. I was offered it, but the food was so good I didn't sense a need to put something else on top. But here it says, let your speech be always gracious words that are seasoned with salt, so that you know how to answer every man. Now we know that salt is that which gives flavor. It's also a preserving element. In every situation and with every person, our words should be seasoned with salt. Jesus' gracious words were able to draw in the heathen, the publicans, and the sinners. They were drawn to him. Must be that his words were gracious. He was offering forgiveness. He said words like, neither do I condemn. Go and sin no more. He said the truth. Don't continue in your sin. But he also offered hope. His harshest words were for the hypocritical religious leaders who missed the weightier things of the law, such as mercy, judgment, and faith. Jesus' words were motivated by genuine love and concern for his fellow man. But the religious leaders' motivation was different. Our words need to be gracious, seasoned words. What are seasoned words? I think of Proverbs 15, verse 1. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. Seasoned words are soft responses. Soft responses. Seasoned words are not angry words. We're not matching fire with fire. Fire rarely extinguishes fire, does it? Does it ever? If you want to extinguish a fire, a conflict, then soft answers, seasoned words. I think seasoned words are also what the scriptures call pleasant words. Listen to the words of the proverb writer, chapter 15:23. A word spoken in due season. How good is it? 15, verse 26, the words of the pure are pleasant words. 16:24, pleasant words are as an honeycomb, sweet to the soul and health to the bones. 25:11, a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pictures of silver. I'm thinking of pleasant words such as compliments, not flattery, but sincere words of appreciation. I tell you, it wasn't that long ago that I was working through some fairly difficult things. In my mind, they were difficult. And one of my daughters realized that I was feeling a little bit stressed. And I found a card that she had placed. I forget where she had placed it. And wow, those words meant a lot. It's just encouraging words, encouraging me to, stand for what I believe. But it was just, I forget what all she said. But they just kind of made my day. They were pleasant words, encouraging words, building words, fortifying words. So let's think of a few other words or types of words. Truthful words. Speaking with grace includes being truthful. Ephesians 4, verse 15 says, but speaking the truth in love. Speaking the truth in love. It tells us what to speak and how to speak. We speak the truth, we speak it in love. Gracious words are truthful words that are motivated by love. Now, we have different temperaments, different personalities, different giftings. And, for some people that have the gift of mercy, they just about melt. They're just so concerned that the person feels like you're empathizing with him and understanding. That's the merciful person. But we also need to understand that mercifulness does not exclude truthfulness. Jesus gave that perfect example, and I talked about it the other evening, of loving that rich young ruler. He looked at him and loved him, and then proceeded to tell him the truth. We can speak the truth, but it must be motivated by love, like Jesus was. Beating around the bush or skirting the issue is not necessarily the answer. However, when we speak the truth, we must consider carefully our choice of words, our tone of voice, so that it is still gracious words. In your home with your children, they need reproof, they need correction, they sometimes need a scolding, they need rebuke, they also need encouragement, they also need to hear compliments, and they need to be comforted. And the same is true in our church life. Our brothers and our sisters also need the same. And our words to each other must be motivated by love and truth. Not one or the other, but with both. Gracious words are truthful words. And then, gracious words are edifying words. Ephesians 4, verse 29 says, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. Ministering grace to those who listen to us. Listen what the proverb writer says about the words of the wise and the words of the righteous. He says, Proverbs 10:11, the mouth of the righteous is a well of life. Can you imagine? Some of you have traveled in countries that were very dry, desert, barren, and you come to an oasis where there's a well or a spring of water. How refreshing. The mouth of the righteous. The words that come from a righteous man's mouth are like that well of life. It is ministering grace. It is just an outflow of life. Proverbs 10:21, the lips of the righteous feed many. When you're feeding someone, you're helping that person, thinking of edifying words that minister grace unto the hearers. Proverbs 10:31 and 32, the mouth of the just bringeth forth wisdom, and the lips of the righteous know what is acceptable. Acceptable speech. That's something children have to learn. There are things you say and there's things you don't say. And there's a time to say it and a time not to say it. Those are all things that children need to learn as adults. Are edifying words. I think of them as words that are right for that time. I will tell you about a very awkward experience I had. When I was, maybe you young fellows here that are the age of 13 or 14, maybe this will never happen to you. I hope it doesn't. But when I was at that age, I felt very awkward. I just felt very self-conscious. And my oldest brother got married at that time. And he lived out of state. The wedding was in another state. We went down to the wedding, and I didn't know his bride very well. And here I was, this self-conscious, I forget, 12, 13, 14-year-old. And everything was just, it was just not my normal circumstances. And then this first sister-in-law is coming into the family, and I barely know her. And what do I say to her? Anyway, after the ceremony, of course, there was the receiving line. And so we went through there, and what do I say? What do I say? And I got up to my sister-in-law at that, and she doesn't remember it, thankfully. I got up there, and I just didn't know what to say. And so I said, "How are you?" It was such an awkward moment. Now, that's innocent. It was just awkwardness. And we can laugh that one off. But edifying words are the words that are appropriate for the occasion. Jesus' harsh words to the Pharisees for their hypocrisy was appropriate for the occasion. They edified. They could actually learn from it. They could change from it. There's times when there's sorrow and grief. There are certain things you express at that moment that you don't at another moment. When a person has lost a loved one, it's probably not the best time to go and try to correct them for a wrong in their life. You think about words that edify, that minister grace, that minister to the need at hand. Proverbs 15:4, a wholesome tongue is a tree of life. Proverbs 15:7, the lips of the wise disperse knowledge. While we're on this subject of our speech, I would like to bring in an aspect that we often don't think about. We're thinking mostly about the words we say to and about others. But I would also like to bring this to a different aspect. When we think about gracious words, which are edifying words, they are truthful words. Remember, truthful. They're edifying, and they're seasoned words, right? I'm not suggesting here today, this evening, that we should be the type that stand in a mirror and look at ourselves and say, "You're great." I'm not saying that. But are the words that you speak to yourself about yourself, what are they? Are they seasoned? Are they true? Do they edify? Maybe you don't have this problem in Indiana, but I know some people, and one person I'm thinking of that I can't see right now, at least not his face, has a problem with sometimes speaking lies to himself. And you're looking at that person right now. Saying things or thinking things, maybe even whispering them about myself. There are people who actually look down on themselves. Now, there's a truth that no man has yet ever hated his own flesh, but nourisheth and cherisheth it. But there are many people who are dissatisfied, whether it's with their physical makeup, how they look, what their abilities are. what they can do and not do. You name it. And they may start actually uttering words against themselves that are a reproach to the Maker. Because we are created in God's image. And yes, there are certain things we can do about some things in our life. I'm not suggesting that we be careless in how we take care of ourselves. But I am saying that there is this hate speech that some people have against themselves. And they berate themselves. They will ridicule themselves. They will down talk themselves. Now, have you, yes, we are to be humble, but is it humble to be talking to ourselves like that when it's not true? Oh, I'm just worthless. I'm a nobody. I'll never amount to anything. You know, if somebody else tells me that, that's bad. And I would be offended. But what if I do it to myself? Maybe none of you do. Maybe you've never done that. Let's remember that that's not true humility. As the piece of pottery, we should not be arguing with the potter in how he has made us. Do your words that you utter about yourself edify you? Or are you believing and speaking lies about yourself? Think about that. That's a different twist to it. Speaking with grace, we're going to wrap this up here soon. Speaking with grace involves several things. I'll just quickly mention them. It means that we respect other people's perspectives and opinions. To speak with grace, we must listen with grace. Speaking with grace involves not airing any and every strong opinion of mine, at the same time not clamming up completely either. I know for myself, I can clam up, not because I'm humbly listening, but inwardly, things are churning in here, and I'm clamming up because I'm going to show that I'm just not going to say anything. Well, our attitudes, I don't know. I find I have to just keep on working on attitudes within myself. So yes, don't air every opinion you have. We don't have to say everything we think in order to be honest. Some people almost think they have to say everything they think just to be honest and transparent. But remember, the Bible does say, a fool uttereth all his mind, everything he thinks. So there's a time to give your opinion, but give it respectfully. There's too much this idea today afloat that we need to give expression to every emotion we feel inside. But remember that your words need to edify. Your words need to be gracious. Your words need to be seasoned with salt. And therefore, we should not just give an unbridled expression just because I feel it. Because in the process, I might ignite a fire that causes a forest fire. Speaking with grace involves common courtesies, being polite. Well, young ladies, young men, you can start practicing this right in your home when you're 9, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. Be respectful in your greetings, in your requests, in your apologies. Learn to say those gracious, courteous words of please, thank you, I'm sorry. Here in the States, maybe we don't do it so much. Living in all the other cultures, you quickly realize the importance of addressing people by titles. That's very important. Here in this, even in Haiti, which is probably not as, they're pretty much that way though too. But other cultures are perhaps even more. To address somebody without a title is just very disrespectful. I think we can, even if it's not totally our culture, it's something to remember. Greet with titles. I think the way we talk about our police officers, our patrols, officers, local authorities, national authorities, should still be with respect and honor. Honor all men. Love the brotherhood. Fear God. Honor the king. And fourth, speaking with grace involves praise and giving of thanks. It excludes grumbling and complaining and whining. In conclusion, our text this evening in James chapter 3 talks about the power of the tongue, that small member of our body. And though it is small, it can do great damage, and humans cannot control it by their own strength. But if the fountain of your heart is cleansed by the blood of Jesus and empowered by the Holy Spirit, then your words can be clean and gracious, edifying, building up, and encouraging. And so, who is at the helm of your life? Who is turning the rudder? Is Jesus at the controls, or are you at the controls? Makes all the difference in what comes out from the heart through the mouth. Who has the reins? Jesus have the reins of your heart, the bit in your mouth, and he's turning you wherever you should be going. God is able to do what man cannot do. He can tame our tongues by converting the heart. May I say, even converting the tongue, or at least the conversion of the heart. The change of the heart changes the way the mouth speaks, because from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Remember, your tongue has the power of life and of death. This evening, I hope we have encouraged you to think about how to use our tongue. And when I say tongue, it's words. And so you can also write words, right? Whether it's writing words or speaking words, let's use them to edify, to minister grace, to give gracious words. May the Lord bless you. I'll turn it back to Brother Wendell.